Hey guys. So our last video we talked about introverted intuition, which is one of the four perceiving cognitive functions or cognitive senses, as Carl Jung used to call them. Today we're going to be talking about extroverted intuition. This video might be a little bit longer because extroverted intuition is very mysterious to a lot of people, especially in the psychological community. Uh, the reason is because it's not very well defined. Some people call it the collective unconscious, at least that's what Carl Jung initially called it. But for the most part, people just don't actually understand what it is or what it's for, or how it works, or where it comes from, and what kind of perceptual awareness it gives the human mind. So, anyway, with that, we're just going to dive right into it. In my little trusty whiteboard here, um, so extrovert intuition is NE, big N, little e. And the users are ESTJ, ESFJ, ENTP, ENFP, ISTJ, ISFJ, INTP, INFP. And it is for metaphysical awareness. So let's talk about what actually is metaphysics. Metaphysics is, in my opinion, the opposite of physics. Physics, if it, like you see them in a yin and yang, right? So you got physics and you got metaphysics, and they're kind of joined together in equilibrium. That's basically how they work. The difference is that the human race is very biased against the existence of metaphysics, and the reason for that is the four temperaments, which we're going to be doing some videos on the temperaments in the very near future. So probably right after we're done going through all 8 cognitive functions. So temperaments, you have the traditionalists, the artisans, the thinkers, also known as the intellectuals, and the idealists. So those 4, basically. Well, the problem with the temperaments is that the traditionalists and the artisans, they make up 70% of the population. And 30% of the population of the planet are intellectuals and idealists, also known as the intuitives, right? And people with high extroverted intuition, because the highest that you can get amongst the sensors, also the traditionalists and the artisans, the highest you can get is extroverted intuition child. You can't and extroverted intuitive inferior, and that's in the SJ types or the traditionalists. So it's actually pretty low, and in fact, it's actually seen as a more feminine cognitive function than a masculine one. If you look at a masculine cognitive function, that's extroverted sensing. We've already talked about that in the extroverted sensing video. But a more feminine oriented, at least as far as human bias goes, is extroverted intuition, also known as the collective unconscious or metaphysical awareness. So because the majority of human beings consider metaphysical awareness to be feminine and somewhat novel, they don't really think it's real, and it's very mysterious and not as important to them. And that can constitute a problem, or many problems, especially with communicating with other human beings. Like we talked about in the extroverted sensing video, metaphysical awareness is all about theory, right? And if you're talking theory with an extroverted sensor, it's just not real to them. And the problem is extroverted sensors outnumber the theory-based extroverted intuitive users, NE users. And because of that, the extroverted sensors, because they have the majority, they think there's something wrong with the extroverted intuitives, like as if their point of view is completely invalid, which is retarded and not actually real. So, but that's the world we live in. There is a type bias. People are biased to favor some cognitive functions and some personality types over others because a lot of them are more common than others, and because of that, well, we just have to deal with it and try to get the human race to understand that people are different for a reason, and that it's okay that they're different, and it's okay that some are more common than others. But more on that later. So metaphysical awareness. Why is that relevant? Well, you have physics, right? And you're able to understand that, up is down and the kinetic energy. But what about the potential energy? Like, we understand that potential energy is converted into kinetic energy, and no energy is actually lost. So imagine when a human being is sensing the world around us, they're able to sense the physical realm, the physical environment, right? But how they actually are aware of the metaphysical or what's not physical, they're able to perceive into that realm. And it's this mystical, almost like an alternate reality. Why? Because it's what is possible. Extroverted sensing is about what is. Extroverted intuition is about what might be, what might happen, what may happen, what is possible for us collectively as a race. That's the collective unconscious. That is what it means, right? So because it means that, we have to open ourselves up to possibilities. And people who have high intuition, high extroverted intuition specifically, are all open to possibilities. Introverted intuitives do this as well, but it's like, what's possible for me? What's possible? What's the best possible path for me to take? Whereas extroverted intuitives are aware of all possible paths for everybody, not just themselves. Although the higher their extroverted intuitive that they are, obviously the higher their introverted intuition is in their lower shadow side of their mind or their unconscious, right? However, because introverted intuition is lower on that side, it can actually become usually with a negative tint and not so much positivity. So like for me, I'm extroverted intuitive hero, right? So that's the apex of my ego, but introverted intuition is the apex of my unconscious mind, and it's antagonistic, it's a nemesis, it goes against my hero. And that's where the fifth slot in the cognitive function is where a person's worry exists. So I'm constantly worrying about my own future, worrying about what I want, worrying about where I'm going to be and what my path is to take. Even though I could see all the paths for everyone else around me, and that could be groups of people I'm in, that could be my community, that could be my county, that could be my state, my nation overall, or the world overall, I can look into all those infinite possible futures at all times. And that's why, like, when I'm talking to an ISTP, they just get so frustrated with me because it's like I'm always talking about theory, I'm always talking about what's possible, but they don't care about what's possible. They care about what's happening right now or what has been done. Because expert intuition is their trickster. It's not even real to them. It doesn't even exist. It doesn't even make sense to them. And because there's more of them than there are of me, they judge me as weird or broken or something's wrong with me or I might be autistic or something like that. And that's a very common narrative from SP types when it comes to conversing about extrovert intuition. Luckily, traditionalist SJ types, I can have that conversation with them and they're mostly okay with it. But even then, I'll still get accused by them for being, way too much in the clouds and not down to earth enough for them because they still maintain that physics is more important and more real than metaphysics. And there's no point in spending so much time talking about theory and what's possible. Yeah, well, tell that to Steve Jobs. Tell that to Benjamin Franklin. Both of those gentlemen were extroverted intuitive heroes because they are both ENTPs like myself, and yet they changed the world in many ways that still affect us to this day. I mean, I'm even shooting this video on an iPhone right now. So what does that tell you, right? So anyway, extrovert intuitive users, what's possible. It also is awareness of what other people want, what they desire, what they're about to do. It allows you to predict things that happen before they do. It's a form of precognition. Extrovert intuition is a form of precognitive capability. You are literally able to predict the future. And in fact, you can see all of those futures available to you, especially if it's a hero with the highest awareness that a human can do. We're able to see into all those possible futures, and then intuitively which of those futures are more likely to occur and which ones are least likely to occur. And you can make decisions to increase the probability of it happening. So let's talk about probability. Probability has a lot to do with extroverted intuition and a lot to do with extroverted thinking, right? So extroverted thinking is aware of statistics, and probabilities go into play with mathematics and statistics, of course, but extrovert intuition is more perception based. It's not based on decisions. It's not based on results of statistics. It's based off of what you see with perceiving. And being an extroverted intuitive, it really jives with the first law of quantum mechanics, which is if you observe a probability, you are more likely to make that probability come true just because you observed it. So if I'm observing all possible futures with expert intuition, and I focus on a particular future path that I want to happen more likely, and I start making decisions to make that possible future more likely to occur, then it is then more likely to occur. It literally makes me a soothsayer because I'm aware of those possible futures. But let's talk about that. That doesn't mean that I can just walk around and just know the future at all times. That's not how that works, because expert intuition is linked, two functions linked together, to introverted sensing. Now, introverted sensing is our next video, and I'll talk more in depth about it, but introverted sensing provides personal experience. And it follows the first law of time, or what I call the first law of time, which is, and I quote, all that has happened before will happen again. That means that history repeats itself. Yeah, I totally just used a Battlestar Galactica line, and I'm totally cool with it. Whatever. Anyway, all that has happened before will happen again. History does have, it repeats itself. So if I've experienced someone doing something in the past, that means I'll be able to anticipate when it's going to happen. If I see the circumstances surrounding that past instance of that action taking place are starting to occur again, then I know that that action is about to come out. So because I have past experience in something, it allows me to see further into the future. That's why people who are trying to develop their future awareness, their metaphysical awareness with expert intuition, if they force themselves to focus on building up as much experience as possible, that increases their ability to see into the future. And they have even more capability to predict. The more experience they have, the more you can use your expert intuition to predict. And that's all it's all about. It's what it's all about. It's all about prediction. It's about precognition, prognostication, all of that future awareness. And that basically allows you to anticipate almost anything. It could be how someone buys groceries at a store. They're going to follow a particular pattern. Extroverted intuition is all about pattern recognition. All that has happened before will happen again, and that's following a certain pattern. And you're just aware of that pattern. And every possible future has a pattern that you can follow. And the circumstances leading up to those futures and circumstances that you can change and insert to divert those futures. There are many times where I've said certain things to certain people knowing that their future would change. And I've sent them down really good paths. I've sent other people down regrettably down some negative paths where their entire life has been dominated because of something I said, because I saw a critical moment in time where I just immediately got in their way, and I had never even had a conversation with them before, but because I've observed them for some time and I was able to understand them from a distance, and then I got right in their face and I made one statement and then I walked off, and then I hear about that person making decisions that I anticipated that they would make like a year later. It's because of what I said, right? And I know the actions they're going to take as a result of what I said, because everything is connected. All that has happened before will happen again. That is what expert intuition is. Another way expert intuition is utilized is for sales. People who are involved in sales usually have high expert intuition because they can sense what you want. Their goal is to find out what your desire is and then create or craft a sale or a deal for you that fits within your desires. And if they can't find what you desire, they're going to find out if they can't provide what you desire, they are going to find out who else can provide what you desire. So then that expert intuitive would go to that person and ask them, hey, let's make a deal so that you can make a deal with this guy on my behalf, etc. Hustlers do it all the time. That's how I traded Pokemon cards in school, and I made a huge profit because I would trade certain cards for some cards that were valuable to other kids to increase my profitability, because I was aware, okay, what the possibilities were, but I was not able to provide what they wanted, so I had to go find what someone else that wanted what I had, and if they had what the other kid wanted. So we would just do like a three-way trade, right? Something that really pissed off my parents a few times when I was growing up, and they barred me from doing that kind of trading, much to my chagrin, but I still made it happen regardless. Anyway, so that's basically what expert intuition is. It's the mind's ability to see into the collective unconscious of man, to see into the future, prognostication, precognition, prediction, pattern recognition, being able to know what other people want, know what they desire, even influence their desires, identify their desires, manipulate their desires, even. It can even happen. Although Introverted Intuition Hero, when matched up with Extroverted Intuition Hero, Introverted Intuition Hero still has the power to make its decision, and it can still break out of any potential trap that the Extroverted Intuitive Hero could actually put into place. It can still trump it. Although Introverted Intuition Parent is not so easily able to trump Extroverted Intuition Hero. But more on that later. We're going to talk about compatibility between cognitive functions and compatibility between types and how information moves between each of the cognitive functions. But those videos will be much later. So anyway, the only temperament that doesn't have extroverted intuitives are SP types. There is not a single extroverted intuitive in SP types. There are plenty of extroverted intuitives and traditionalists, intellectuals, and idealists. So that's 8 of the 16 types of extroverted intuition. Yeah, and also, like, if you're having a problem with an extroverted intuitive that you think is manipulating you or causing you trouble or problems or in your family or trying to sell you on a deal, the best way to stop someone from using their extroverted intuition is really to make them uncomfortable. If you make them uncomfortable, it inhibits their ability to use extroverted intuition. It's a really passive cognitive function. It's not an active cognitive function like extroverted sensing is or introverted intuition. But it's very passive. So by giving them an experience with, say, extroverted sensing, like real quick when they don't expect it, it makes them uncomfortable, and they have to immediately withdraw from the situation and recalculate what their plan is or what the futures are. They have to like go back to their crystal ball and read their crystal ball to figure out what the new future is because of what this random assertion that you did, giving them an experience when they least expect it and made them uncomfortable, right? So that's how you defeat extroverted intuition. I didn't mention how to defeat extroverted sensing, and the best way to do that is to just overwhelm them with options, with potential futures, potential actions, of actions that they could end up taking and the consequences of those actions. Extroverted intuition is all about seeing the future and knowing the consequences to all potential actions that could take place. It's like a shotgun, and the shot goes out everywhere, and you can see all possible paths. But that shotgun still has that initial point of entry at the beginning. That's where the introverted sensing exists, but all of the paths is extroverted intuition from there. Whereas introverted intuition is like a sniper rifle. It's just one path forward and like a laser, and they can get there. And usually can still, in some cases, wrest itself free of extroverted intuition's influence by using extroverted sensing to make the extroverted intuitive uncomfortable. So, but yeah, more on that later. We're going to be doing some videos where I'm literally going to be psychoanalyzing celebrities and doing videos on how to manipulate celebrities or VIPs. So, like for example, a politician and like a lobbyist would want to watch my channel and just be like, here, Mr. Lobbyist, here's how you would basically break into the psychology of this person to get to sell them better on the idea you're trying to preach to them, etc. Like that'll be a thing. And we'll go more into the depth of how these cognitive functions interact in those or in any situation, basically. So anyway, that's everything on extrovert intuition for today. If you guys found this informational, helpful, educational, please like and subscribe. If you have any questions about extrovert intuition, leave it in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. Yeah, so thanks for watching. Have a good night.